The automotive world was once filled with absurd features that seemed brilliant at the time. These 10 features disappeared because they were genuinely ridiculous. Stick around because number 7 will shock you. Cadillac and Lincoln once tried to outdo each other with a show of sound. Their luxury models boasted multi-tone trumpet horns, musical blasts that could turn a simple honk into a 3-note fanfare. On paper, it was the ultimate status symbol. Your car did not just announce itself, it performed. But in practice, these horns hit 112 decibels at full blast, louder than a jackhammer, and definitely louder than any polite warning. City streets turned into impromptu parades every time a driver got impatient at a stoplight. Residents in downtown neighborhoods started filing complaints about the constant racket. By the early 1970s, city councils had heard enough. Municipal codes began capping horn volume and banning musical or multi-tone horns outright. New York and Los Angeles both passed noise ordinances that specifically targeted these automotive serenades. What started as a luxury flourish ended up as a legal headache, and by the mid-1970s, the trumpet horn's reign was over. Today, the only place you will hear that sound is in a classic car parade, or maybe in a museum where it cannot wake the neighbors. Vinyl roofs promised instant glamour, a hardtop disguised as a convertible, straight from the dealer's glossy brochure. The pitch was pure 1970s fantasy, rich, textured vinyl stretched tight over steel, sealed with a bead of butyl adhesive. But beneath that showroom shine, trouble was already brewing. The adhesive, a sticky black ribbon, was supposed to keep out the elements. Instead, it trapped moisture between the vinyl and the steel roof panel. Every humid summer, rainwater and condensation crept in along the seams. Road salt worked its way through microscopic cracks, feeding a hidden colony of rust. Restorers peeling back these roofs decades later discovered the ugly truth. Steel eaten away in silence, while the vinyl above stayed smooth and smug. Delamination started after just a few years, especially in warmer climates. Bubbles formed under the skin, the adhesive lost its grip, and the vinyl cracked into a spider web of failure. By the time the first rust spots appeared on the surface, the real damage was already done. Repairing the mess meant stripping the roof, grinding out corrosion, and replacing whole panels, often at a cost higher than the car's value. What began as a shortcut to luxury ended up as a slow-motion disaster. That faux convertible look didn't just age badly, it turned the roof into a rust trap that devoured cars from the inside out. Chrome hood ornaments once promised drivers a taste of science right on the front of their car. A small thermometer, gleaming in the sun, supposedly reported the outside temperature at a glance. The idea was pure optimism. Check the weather without ever leaving your seat. But in practice, the result was more smoke and mirrors than meteorology. Park a car with one of these ornaments on a summer day, and the reading would jump 20 or 30 degrees higher than the actual air temperature. Heat from the engine and from the sun turned the ornament into a little oven, and the so-called outside reading drifted further from reality with every mile. The real trouble ran deeper than bad data. Inside the glass bulb sat a tiny column of mercury, chosen for its quick response to temperature, but notorious for its toxicity. A fender bender or a stray rock could crack the glass and spill mercury onto hot metal. Even a small leak could contaminate the engine bay and the wiring, creating a hazard no driver expected from a decorative accessory. By the late 1950s, as the dangers of mercury became harder to ignore and drivers realized the readings were more fiction than fact, these ornaments quietly vanished from showrooms. What started as a dash of futuristic flair ended up as a cautionary tale. Sometimes shiny gadgets hide problems that cannot be polished away. Night driving in the late 1950s promised a taste of the future for anyone with deep enough pockets. Perched on the dashboard, a glassy little dome called the GM Autronic Eye watched the road ahead, ready to switch your headlights between high and low beam without you lifting a finger. The idea sounded brilliant. No more blinding oncoming drivers, no more fiddling with switches. but the reality was a lot less impressive. The sensor, a primitive photocell, could not tell the difference between a car's headlights and a streetlight. Cruise under a row of lamps, and your beams would flicker like a disco, leaving you squinting into darkness at exactly the wrong moment. The price for this high-tech headache was $79 back then, and about $800 today. For that, you got a system that misread porch lights, tail lights, even the moon on a clear night. Drivers found themselves slamming the override switch just to keep their lights on. The promise of effortless safety turned into a nightly guessing game, and the only thing more dazzling than the technology was the confusion it caused. The dash-mounted sensor became a punchline, and by the early 1960s, most owners had given up, leaving their expensive gadget switched off and their high beams firmly under human control. Nothing says the 1950s excess like the Continental kit, a gleaming oversized spare tire bolted to the back bumper, wrapped in enough chrome to blind a passing pilot. This was not just a style move, it was a full-on attempt to make your car look longer and more luxurious, even if it meant stretching the garage to fit. Dealer dimension sheets from the era show the kit could add up to 24 inches to the car's length and tack on more than 150 pounds behind the rear axle. The result? Parallel parking became a circus act. Owners found themselves creeping back and forth, trying to wedge a car that now stuck out like a diving board. The extra bulk was not just a headache at the curb. That shiny cover trapped road salt and moisture against the bumper, quietly feeding a rust problem that would outlast the car's resale value. And while the kit was supposed to keep your spare handy, it actually made tire theft easier and trunk access harder. By the early 1960s, the Continental kit had become a punchline. Too heavy, too long, too much trouble for anyone who did not have a driveway the size of a parade route. A pop-up headlight is a simple idea. Press a button and the headlights rise up, ready to slice through the night. But as any mechanic with a sense of humor will tell you, those hideaway systems were an open invitation for chaos. The first problem was vacuum leaks. Early systems depended on a web of rubber hoses and diaphragms, all powered by the engine's vacuum. Over time, even a tiny leak, measured at just 0.12 cubic centimeters per minute, could leave one headlight up, the other stuck, and the driver looking like a confused cyclops. Winter made things worse. A cold snap could freeze the headlight rails solid, locking both lights in place until spring thaw. Owners in snowy states learned to carry a hairdryer or just accept driving with one eye shut. By the 2000s, the final blow landed from an unexpected direction: new pedestrian safety rules. Regulations banned any sharp-edge protrusion higher than 30 millimeters, which meant a raised pop-up headlight now counted as a legal hazard to anyone unlucky enough to meet it. Automakers quietly dropped the feature after 2005, leaving behind a legacy of jammed motors, frozen lids, and the occasional one-eyed sports car winking at passersby. Today, the only place you'll find pop-up headlights in action is at a classic car meet, or in a mechanic shop halfway through a vacuum test and a stand-up routine. Chrysler's Highway Hi-Fi promised drivers a rolling concert hall, provided you had $195 to spare in 1956, a price that could buy you a decent used car back then. The system hid a 7-inch record player under the dash, spinning special 16 2/3 revolutions per minute discs that only Chrysler sold. About 18,000 buyers took the plunge, dreaming of jazz or Sinatra on the open road, but reality hit at the first pothole. Consumer Reports ran skip tests and found the needle leapt off track at the slightest bump. The ad copy boasted "music wherever you go," but the only thing consistent was the scratchy interruption every time the pavement got rough. For the music lover who wanted to spin big, the Highway Hi-Fi delivered a lesson in why some ideas sound better on paper than they do at 60 miles an hour. Swivel seats promised a touch of futuristic luxury in the late 1950s, especially if you drove a 1957 Imperial. For $112, buyers could order a front seat that rotated outward, making it easier to slide in or out. No more awkward climbing or torn suit pants. Chrysler brochures showed smiling drivers demonstrating the feature, and about 3,200 cars left the factory with this option. But the real story started once those seats racked up a few thousand miles. The latch mechanism, meant to lock the seat in place, wore down with regular use. Mechanics recall customers complaining that the seat would suddenly spin mid-turn, sending drivers sliding sideways at the worst possible moment. What started as a clever convenience quickly turned into a moving hazard, one that left more than a few drivers clutching the wheel and questioning their upholstery choices. A whistle tip on the exhaust turned every drive into an impromptu parade, shrieking loud enough to earn its own ban in New York by 1947. Meanwhile, the dashboard tissue dispenser promised luxury at $3.50, but mostly delivered dried-out tissues in a chrome box nobody needed. Not every automotive extra was a leap forward. Sometimes it was just a noisy detour or a petty convenience in search of a problem. Today's dashboards may be digital, but the temptation for flashy gimmicks is alive and well. As tech races ahead, even the wildest features can be a sales pitch away from reality. Progress or punchline, it's a fine line. What automotive absurdity will we laugh at next? Share your predictions below.